Welcome back to the deep dive. We all love Avatar, The Last Airbender,
Oh, yeah.
right? But have you ever thought about all the work that went into making that world? Today we are going to dive deep into Jiran Zhao's analysis of the show's cultural inspirations.
Okay.
We're not just going to list them out, though.
Right.
We're going to try to understand how those inspirations actually make Avatar so good.
I think that's what's so fascinating about this particular analysis is that, so many people just kind of assume that Avatar is just Chinese and Japanese inspired.
Right.
But what Zhao does is really show that it's way more diverse than that.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Inuit culture for the water tribes.
Wow.
We're talking Tibetan influence for the air nomads. It's this really incredible tapestry that adds so much depth.
Totally. And it makes you realize that the creators really wanted to get things right,
Mhm.
instead of just using a few stereotypical elements,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
Did you know that Katara's hair loopies are
Yeah.
inspired by Inuit hairstyles? Oh, wow. I didn't.
And even names like Sokka and Karuk actually come from Inuit languages.
That's so
It's
cool.
little things like that that really make the world feel believable.
Absolutely. And the attention to detail isn't just in the appearances either.
Right.
I mean, think about bending.
Yeah.
Each of the bending styles is connected to a real martial art.
Right.
But it's not just random, Like water bending is based on Tai Chi,
Mm-hmm.
which is known for its flow and adaptability.
Right. Just like water.
Exactly. It's those choices that make the fighting styles not just visually cool,
Yeah.
but meaningful, thematically meaningful.
So it's not just picking a cool fighting style, it's picking one that makes sense for that element.
Right.
That's awesome.
And it goes deeper than that.
Really?
Yeah, Zhao points out that bending also draws on this whole concept of qi,
Oh, yeah.
vital energy from Chinese culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Iroh tells Zuko that fire comes from the breath, not the muscle.
Oh, yeah.
That's a direct reference to qi.
And it adds this whole other layer to understanding how bending even works,
It's like they're adding science to the magic.
Yeah, and philosophy.
Right. So it's not just cool moves. It's
Right.
tied to this ancient understanding of energy and balance.
Exactly. And don't forget, they also had Sifu Kisu.
Who is that?
He was the martial arts consultant for the show.
Oh, cool.
And he made sure that all of the bending styles were grounded in real martial arts principles,
Okay.
making the fight scenes believable and, exciting.
So thanks to him, the fights are both cool to watch.
Exactly.
But let's move on from the fights for a second, talk about the world itself.
Okay.
The visuals in the show are incredible.
Absolutely.
And Zhao's analysis kind of breaks down just how much real-world inspiration went into those places.
Yeah, and it's amazing the attention to detail.
Right.
The look of the Southern Water Tribe was heavily influenced by Edenarjuet, the Fast Runner,
Okay.
which is a film about life in a small Inuit tribe. But then, the Fire Nation capital has architectural styles from China, Japan, even Thailand.
Really?
It's they took all the coolest parts of these cultures
Yeah.
to create this unique visual experience.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's not just the big stuff.
Right.
There's so many little details too. You see ancient Chinese weapons, pottery, the different styles of clothes. Even the money they use is based on real historical examples.
Wow.
It seems like they went all out to make the world feel authentic.
It's those small details that, while they might seem insignificant, actually make the world feel believable and lived in.
You could actually imagine yourself being there.
Exactly.
That's what's so cool about it. But here's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Zhao says the cultural inspirations are more than just window dressing.
Right.
They also actually affect the way the show explores some pretty deep themes.
Yeah, it's not just about visuals.
Right.
The show tackles some really complex stuff like imperialism,
Okay.
colonialism, even propaganda, things you wouldn't expect to see in a kid's show.
Right.
Think about the Fire Nation's goals of expansion,
Yeah.
their propaganda, how they justified going to war. It's all very similar to real-world examples.
So the Fire Nation isn't just a bunch of bad guys.
Right.
They're actually a complex reflection of how power works in the real world.
Exactly, and that's where the cultural influences really come into play.
Mm-hmm.
The show explores these ideas of honor,
Yeah.
duty, family, and personal identity
Mm.
in a way that uses both Eastern and Western ideas about storytelling.
Wow. So they're really blending those ideas together.
Yeah, and that's how they create these really nuanced characters and conflicts that are morally gray.
Right.
It makes the story so much richer.
It's real life, not everything is just black and white.
Exact.
And speaking of Zuko, his initial hairstyle, the shaved head with the top knot,
Mm-hmm.
we usually associate that with samurai and, nobility.
Yeah.
But in the Fire Nation, it actually represents shame.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like the creators were playing with our expectations.
Right.
They use visuals to make us think one thing,
Yeah.
and then they flip it around through the story.
It's like they're always keeping us on our toes.
That's amazing. What about you? What stands out to you about how these cultural details affect the characters or what happens in the show?
I think it's how the show uses all these different influences
Mm-hmm.
to make the world feel really diverse.
Yeah.
Like take the Earth Kingdom, for example.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just think it's based on China,
Right.
but it actually pulls from a bunch of different cultures.
Oh, wow.
You have the Kyoshi warriors who were inspired by Japanese samurai.
Right.
Then you have the Ganjin tribe with the fancy hanfu and how refined they are.
Yeah,
It's not just one big culture, but a mix of influences just like our own world.
that's a great point. Speaking of taking inspiration, remember how we were talking about how each bending style is based on a martial art?
Uh-huh.
Well, Zhao pointed out that the Fire Nation's look wasn't always so Chinese. Yeah. At first, they were leaning more towards Imperial Japan, but they switched to being more Chinese, probably because they didn't want people to have negative associations with the recent history of Imperial Japan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's interesting to think about their choices, and how they tried to make things inclusive and respectful.
It shows that even these inspirations aren't static. They change as the show develops.
Exactly. And speaking of evolving inspirations,
Yeah.
you know how we talked about bending being tied to martial arts?
Yeah.
Well, there's another layer to that, especially with firebending.
Oh, okay.
Zhao says they were inspired by Stephen Chow movies.
I love his movies.
Yeah, me too. But specifically, they were inspired by the idea of adding a supernatural element to martial arts.
Right.
Remember how Zuko really struggled with his firebending at first?
Yeah.
He's told that his fire comes from his breath, which we know is linked to chi.
Mm-hmm.
But he's too focused on his anger and being aggressive.
It's like he's trying to force it
Yeah.
instead of letting it flow naturally.
Yeah. And that struggle even shows up visually, too. At first, his firebending looks rough and out of control, like he's fighting against it.
That visual representation of his struggle is so subtle but powerful. A great example of how those cultural influences are woven into the characters themselves.
Right. Like, it's not just about the moves themselves, it's about what those moves represent.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that's not just limited to firebending either.
Oh, okay.
Waterbending also blends those visuals and philosophy.
Yeah.
The focus on being fluid and adaptable in waterbending ties directly back to the ideas of Tai Chi.
It's fascinating how each bending style ends up mirroring the bender's personality and journey.
Mm.
Like Katara's waterbending is so graceful and compassionate.
Yeah.
Aang's airbending is nimble and evasive.
Yeah.
And Toph's earthbending is super grounded and strong.
Right. It's like an extension of who they are.
They're all unique, just like the people who bend them.
That connection between bending and personality also leads us to another big part of the show, how it depicts spirituality.
Oh, yeah.
Avatar draws on so many different spiritual traditions. Like you see the air nomads' connection to Tibetan Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
and the fire sages have rituals that seem to be inspired by old Chinese practices.
And we can't forget the spirit world.
Oh, right.
It's so visually amazing with all these mystical creatures and those dreamy landscapes.
Totally. Remember Heibai?
The black and white spirit.
Yeah. He was originally a panda,
Oh, wow.
which in Chinese culture is a symbol of conservation.
It's that blend of spiritual beliefs and cultural symbolism that makes the spirit world so cool.
Mm-hmm.
It adds this layer of mystery, but also allows the show to explore ideas like balance, harmony, and how everything is connected.
It's such a great example of how the show uses cultural inspiration to make its themes even deeper.
And that depth is what keeps us coming back to Avatar even after all these years.
Mhm.
It's a show that keeps on giving. You discover something new every time you watch it.
Absolutely. Understanding these cultural influences makes you really appreciate how much effort and detail went into this show.
It's truly a work of art.
Yeah.
And speaking of Aang's journey, Zhao's analysis highlighted something cool about his name.
Okay.
It might sound like just one syllable, but it's actually represented by two Chinese characters: peace and soaring.
Wow, that's perfect for Aang.
Right.
He is a peacemaker at heart, always trying to find balance and harmony, but he's also this free spirit, flying around with his airbending.
It's like his name foreshadows his whole journey as the Avatar.
Totally.
He has to master all four elements, but he also has to learn how to deal with war and conflict while staying true to his air nomad values.
And that struggle is portrayed so well in the Southern Air Temple episode.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
You really feel Ong's grief and loss when he sees what happened to the air nomads.
It's such a heartbreaking moment, and the show doesn't shy away from those hard emotions.
It shows how much emotional depth the show has.
And the cultural influences, especially the air nomads' connection to Tibetan Buddhism, make Aang's spiritual journey feel even more real.
You see that connection everywhere, from the monks' orange and yellow robes to even the name of Aang's mentor, Monk Gyatso,
Oh, yeah.
which is actually a reference to the Dalai Lama lineage.
Wow. These little details, even though they seem small, make Aang's spiritual journey so much richer. They ground it in a real-world tradition.
Exactly.
So his struggles and his successes feel even more meaningful.
And speaking of meaningful struggles, let's talk about Aang's training to master the four elements.
Okay.
Zhao points out that each element is actually tied to a specific cultural idea or philosophy,
Oh, really?
which adds another layer to his training.
Okay.
It's not just about physically bending the elements.
Right.
It's about understanding and embodying the ideas behind them.
It's like a philosophy training montage.
Right.
I love it. So, like, waterbending is about change and adaptability, right?
Exactly, reflecting the nature of water itself.
So it's about going with the flow, being flexible, and embracing transformation.
And then you have earthbending, which is about strength and perseverance.
Just like the earth itself.
Right. It's about being grounded, standing your ground and never giving up.
And remember how much Aang struggled with earthbending at first?
Oh, yeah.
He was so used to the light and airy movements of airbending that he really had a hard time getting used to the grounded, steady nature of earthbending.
It shows how the show uses cultural symbolism to create these internal struggles for the characters and help them grow.
Right. Aang's struggles with earthbending weren't just about learning new moves. They were about him facing his own limits and the ideas he had about things.
He had to learn to adapt, to be both yielding and unyielding.
Just like the earth. Exactly.
And that ability to adapt is a big part of Aang's whole journey.
Right.
He's always running into new challenges, new cultures, learning how to deal with a world at war.
It's like he's taking a crash course in understanding different cultures.
Totally.
And he learns important lessons about respect, empathy, and why it's so important to see things from other people's points of view. Those are important lessons for all of us.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite examples of that?
Remember the Great Divide episode?
Oh, yeah.
Aang meets these two tribes who are constantly fighting,
Right.
and they both have completely different stories about their history.
Oh, that's so true.
It's a really smart way to talk about conflict in the real world
Yeah.
and show how dangerous prejudice can be.
And how important it is to try and understand each other.
Exactly. And even the visuals in that episode reinforce that idea.
How so?
The Ganjin tribe wears elegant hanfu, while the Zhang tribe has a more rugged, tribal look.
You never noticed that.
Yeah, those visual cues subtly show the differences between the two tribes,
Okay.
which makes their conflict even more complex.
And Aang, being the peacemaker, has to find a way through those differences and come up with a solution that works for both sides.
Right.
It's like a perfect example of how the show uses those cultural details to create these really complicated conflicts and explore themes like tolerance and understanding.
It's this focus on nuance that makes Avatar so much more than a kid's show.
Right.
It challenges us to think critically,
Yeah.
to question our own biases, and to try and see things from different points of view.
That's what makes it so great.
Exactly. It really is. And you know, those four bending styles, water bending, earth bending, fire bending, and air bending,
Yeah.
they're more than just superpowers, right?
Right.
They're really like extensions of the characters' personalities, their beliefs,
Yeah.
and even their cultural backgrounds.
You know what? Now that you mention it, we talked about how each bending style is linked to a specific martial art. But it seems like there's like another layer of cultural influence there.
Oh, totally.
Like each style is a reflection of like a different aspect of East Asian philosophy and spirituality.
Exactly. Like take water bending, for example. It's all about fluidity and adapting, going with the flow, like in the Taoist principle of wu wei,
Wu Wei.
effortless action, you know, not forcing things, but moving with the current and adapting to change.
That makes so much sense. It's like Katara's waterbending.
Right.
It's so graceful and fluid, just like water itself.
Yeah,
It even reflects her personality.
totally.
She's adaptable, compassionate, and always willing to go with the flow.
Exactly.
Okay, what about earthbending?
Earthbending is all about being grounded and strong.
Mm-hmm.
It reflects those Confucian values of stability, order, and perseverance, just like the earth itself.
Okay.
It's about holding your ground, being unyielding,
Yeah.
and pushing through challenges.
No wonder Toph's such a powerful earthbender.
Right.
Just so stubborn and independent, and she never backs down from a fight.
Exactly. Her bending style is like a perfect match for her personality.
And firebending.
Firebending, well, at its core, it's about finding the balance between energy and destruction,
Right.
which is a concept that you find in a lot of East Asian spiritual traditions.
It's like fire itself. It
Right.
can be really destructive and dangerous,
Oh.
but it's also a source of warmth and light. It can even be used to create things.
Mhm.
It's all about finding that balance, controlling that raw power.
And remember how Zuko struggles with that early on?
Oh, yeah.
His firebending is fueled by so much anger,
Yeah.
rage, reflecting his inner turmoil, making it destructive.
Okay.
But when he starts to let go of that anger,
Right.
embraces a more balanced approach,
Mm-hmm.
his firebending becomes more precise, more controlled.
It's like a visual representation of his internal struggle.
Exactly.
So cool.
What about airbending?
Oh, yeah, airbending.
Airbending is about those evasive movements.
Hmm.
It's spiritual,
Yeah.
and it involves detaching yourself from worldly worries.
Okay.
It reflects those Buddhist ideas of nonviolence and reaching enlightenment.
It makes sense that the air nomads were the ones who mastered airbending.
Right.
Their whole culture was based on those principles of peace, harmony, and spiritual enlightenment.
Exactly.
And Nahang, as the last airbender, he embodies those ideals perfectly.
His airbending is so fluid, so graceful,
Uh.
almost like he's dancing with the wind.
I love watching him bend.
Yeah,
And he's got such a peaceful and carefree personality.
he does.
It's hard to believe he's the one who's supposed to save the world.
It's that contrast that makes his story so interesting.
Yeah.
He's this peaceful, fun-loving kid who's suddenly thrown into this world of conflict and violence.
Right.
And he has to figure out how to balance his pacifist beliefs
Mm-hmm.
with his responsibility as the avatar.
That's a lot for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, it's a lot for anyone to handle.
But he does it with such grace and humor, and he always believes in the good in people.
He really does.
So inspiring.
And speaking of inspiring, one thing I love about the show is how it portrays female characters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's so positive.
Tell me more.
Like, in so many shows and movies, the heroes are usually men.
Right.
But in Avatar, we have these strong, capable, and complex women who are essential to the story.
We do. We've got Katara.
Yeah.
She's a compassionate healer and a powerful waterbender.
And top.
Oh, yeah. Toph, the blind earthbending prodigy who doesn't take any crap from anyone.
And then there's Suki, the skilled warrior and leader of the Kyoshi warriors.
Right.
And even Azula,
Oh, yeah.
the antagonist,
Mhm.
she's a force to be reckoned with.
It's so cool to see such a variety of female characters,
Right.
each with her own strengths and weaknesses, motivations.
Mhm.
They're not just stereotypes or tropes.
Exactly.
They're real people who challenge those old ideas about what women can and can't do.
Right.
And they inspire people of all genders.
Absolutely. They show that women can be strong and independent,
Mm-hmm.
compassionate.
And even ruthless when they need to be.
Exactly.
It's such an important message, especially for young girls watching the show.
Oh, totally.
It's like the show is saying, hey, look, you can be anything you want to be.
Right.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
It's a message that's still so relevant today, unfortunately.
Sadly, yes.
We need more stories like Avatar that show how powerful and capable women can be.
Right. And it's not just about representation. It's
Mhm.
about showing how complex female characters can be.
Yeah, they're not perfect.
Right.
They mess up sometimes. They have flaws.
But that's what makes them relatable.
Right.
It makes them human.
They're just like us,
Exactly.
trying to figure things out,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make a difference in the world.
It's that realness that makes them so inspiring.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, hey, we can all be heroes.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what gender you are.
Exactly.
And speaking of heroes, let's talk about another important theme in Avatar,
Okay.
challenging authority.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, throughout the show, the characters are constantly running into these corrupt or abusive authority figures.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Fire Lord Ozai,
Mhm.
Long Fang
Yeah.
Sao, all these people who are hungry for power.
And the show encourages us To question those people, to
Yeah.
stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
We see that in Aang, how he resists the Fire Nation's imperialism,
Mm-hmm.
in Zuko's choice to betray his father and join the Avatar,
Yeah.
and how Katara is willing to challenge sexism and fight for equality.
Those are some powerful examples. Like
Yeah.
the show is saying, hey, real strength doesn't come from blindly following orders,
It comes from having the courage to stand up for what you believe in.
even when it means going against the grain or putting yourself at risk. Such an important message, especially for young viewers.
It's a message that's important for everyone.
Right.
We all have a responsibility to speak out against injustice,
Yeah.
to work toward a world that's more fair and just for everyone.
And sometimes that means making people uncomfortable,
He does.
challenging the way things are.
And fighting for what we believe in.
Exactly. Speaking of fighting, let's talk about the environmental themes in the show.
Okay.
Avatar is set in this world where humans and nature live together. But the Fire Nation's industrialization and expansion are messing with that balance.
Right.
And we see the bad stuff that happens because of their actions: polluted rivers,
Yeah.
forests getting destroyed, people forced to leave their homes.
Yeah, it's a mess.
And the spirit world gets all messed up too.
It's like they're mirroring the impact we have on the environment in the real world.
Exactly. The show doesn't shy away from showing what happens when industrialization goes unchecked.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we need to find a better way, a more sustainable way to move forward.
And it does it all without being preachy or boring.
It's true. They weave those environmental messages into the story in a way that feels natural, engaging. You see the characters grappling with these issues, making choices that have real consequences for the world around them.
It shows us how important it is to respect nature, to find that balance between progress and protecting the environment.
That's a message that's more important now than ever,
It is.
especially with climate change being such a big threat.
It's amazing how Avatar manages to deal with such complex issues
I know, right.
like environmentalism, colonialism, authoritarianism.
It's crazy how they do it in a way that's both entertaining and makes you think.
Right.
It's like they're saying, hey, these are important things to think about, even if you're watching a cartoon.
Exactly. It's a testament to the creator's skill,
Yeah.
their vision that they were able to weave these themes into a show meant for kids.
Right.
But that still speaks to adults.
It's a show for everyone.
And speaking of the creator's vision, let's talk about how they show leadership.
Okay.
Avatar gives us all these different leaders, each with their own style and way of doing things.
Like, what are some examples?
Well, you have Adang, who leads with compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's Zuko, who goes on this journey of self-discovery and redemption.
Right.
You have Katara, who offers nurturing guidance.
Yeah.
And then there are those who are more ruthless, like Azula and the Fire Lord.
It's like a whole lesson on different ways to lead.
Exactly.
And it highlights the fact that there's no one right way to be a leader.
Right.
Good leaders adapt their style to the situation. They know their strengths and weaknesses.
And most importantly, effective leaders care about the people they lead. They try to create a world that's fair and just.
Avatar shows us that true leadership isn't about power or control.
It's about service.
Compassion.
And a commitment to making things better.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
And it's something that resonates with people of all ages.
It does.
Avatar encourages us to think about what makes a good leader, to consider the qualities that we admire in leaders,
Right.
and then to try and embody those qualities ourselves.
And speaking of qualities we admire, one thing I love about Avatar is how it shows resilience.
Oh, tell me more about that.
The characters in this show go through so much.
It's true.
Loss, betrayal, violence, carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders.
And they never give up.
They don't. They pick themselves back up, dust themselves off,
Yeah.
and keep fighting for what they believe in.
It's like they're showing us that even when things feel impossible, there's always a reason to keep going, to never give up on ourselves.
For our dreams.
And they remind us that messing up isn't the end.
It's a chance to learn.
To grow and to come back stronger.
That idea of resilience is so important.
It is.
Especially for young people.
Yeah.
Avatar proves that we all have the ability to overcome tough stuff, to find strength when things are hard.
And to use those challenges to change for the better.
It's like a message that we can all take with us.
Right.
A reminder that even in our darkest times, there's a light inside us, a spark of hope that can guide us through.
That brings us to another theme explored in Avatar: personal growth and self-discovery.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
Throughout the series, we see the characters changing, learning from their mistakes.
Facing their fears and becoming more mature and well-rounded.
It's like we watch them grow up.
Aang's journey as the Avatar is basically a journey of self-discovery.
It's true.
He starts out as this playful, carefree kid,
Yeah.
but through all that he goes through,
Right.
he learns about responsibility, sacrifice, and what balance really means.
He becomes this wise and compassionate leader,
He does.
able to guide the world towards peace.
And Zuko's story is such a powerful example of redemption and how forgiveness can change people.
Oh, yeah.
He starts out as this angry prince,
Right.
wants revenge,
Yeah.
consumed by the need to regain his honor.
But as he travels and meets different people...
He learns to let go of that anger,
Right.
to embrace compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
He finds his own way,
Okay.
one that makes him a force for good.
It's so satisfying to watch him change.
It is.
And Katara.
Yeah. She starts out as this protective older sister, nurturing and compassionate,
Okay.
but she grows into this powerful waterbender
Freyr.
and a confident leader.
She really comes into her own.
And Toph, even though she's blind, is fiercely independent,
Yeah.
determined, learns to connect with others, embraces her abilities, and becomes a vital part of the team.
She's such an inspiration, especially for anyone who's ever felt different or overlooked.
Exactly.
All of these characters show us that personal growth is a journey.
It is.
It takes looking inward,
Mm-hmm.
being willing to learn from mistakes,
Yeah.
and having the courage to push ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
It's a reminder that we're all always growing and changing.
That's what makes life so interesting.
Avatar reminds us that the journey is just as important as the destination,
Right.
that the tough times shape us into who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and that we get to choose our own paths.
We get to make our own destinies.
And speaking of destinies,
Yeah.
Zhao's analysis also looks at how the show explores fate and free will.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Like, the characters in Avatar are often dealing with prophecies, destinies, expectations that feel like they're already set.
Like Dawang as the Avatar.
Exactly. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, destined to restore balance and defeat the Fire Lord.
Okay.
And Zuko, initially, is driven by this sense of destiny, this need to fulfill his role as a Fire Nation prince and win back his honor.
But it seems like the show is saying that while fate might play a part, we ultimately get to choose our own paths.
It's like a paradox.
Right.
They're facing these paths that seem predetermined,
Yeah.
but they end up making their own choices.
So they create their own destinies.
Exactly. Aang chooses to do things his own way, defying what's expected of him,
Okay.
to find peace.
And Zuko.
Zuko breaks free from those rigid Fire Nation beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and finds his own definition of honor.
It's like they're saying, we're not just puppets of fate.
Right.
We have the power to make choices,
Mhm.
to do things differently.
And shape our own lives.
That's such an empowering message, especially in a world where it's easy to feel like things are out of our control.
Exactly.
Avatar reminds us that we do have choices.
Mhm.
We have power.
Right.
We can create positive change.
And speaking of positive change, one of the things that makes Avatar so enduring is its optimism. Despite all the darkness and violence,
Yeah.
there's this thread of hope that runs through the whole story.
It's like a light shining in the darkness.
Exactly. And that hope is really embodied in Aang.
Right.
Even though he saw his people destroyed and faces all these crazy challenges,
Yeah.
he never loses faith in humanity.
Right.
He never stops believing that good can overcome evil.
His optimism is contagious.
It is.
It's a reminder that even when things look bad,
Yeah.
there's always a reason to be hopeful. There's always a chance for things to get better.
For growth, for a brighter future.
And it's that message of hope,
Yeah.
along with the visuals, the characters, those thought-provoking themes,
Right.
that makes Avatar: The Last Airbender such a timeless masterpiece.
It's a show that goes beyond cultures and speaks to everyone. It leaves us feeling a sense of wonder and inspiration.
And speaking of the power of storytelling, let's take a moment to appreciate the creators of the show,
Oh, yes.
Brian Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino.
They created this incredible world.
They did.
This mix of cultures, philosophies,
Yeah.
spiritual tradition.
They gave us characters that feel real and relatable.
Yeah.
Characters that we can all learn from.
And they dealt with complex issues in such a sensitive and thoughtful way.
It's true. Their story continues to resonate with people all over the world.
It does.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is a real testament to the power of imagination, to the importance of representing different cultures,
Yeah.
and to how much people love stories that speak to our shared human experiences.
And it all started with a simple idea.
What was that?
What if there was a world where people could control the elements?
From that one idea, they
Yeah.
created this amazing world,
Full of adventure.
wonder and meaning.
And they did it with so much respect for the cultures and traditions that inspired them.
It's a show that celebrates diversity,
Mm.
explores complex ideas,
Yeah.
and encourages us to be better people.
It's a show that reminds us to have hope,
Mm-hmm.
to understand each other.
Yeah, and how strong the human spirit can be.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Avatar,
Mm-hmm.
let's remember the lessons it taught us.
What are some of those lessons?
Embrace diversity.
Okay.
Stand up against injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Find strength in each other.
Yeah.
And never give up hope.
Let's carry that spirit of Avatar with us,
Yeah.
and let's keep exploring all the amazing things that make our world so unique and special.
Because there's always more to learn,
Mm-hmm.
more to discover,
Yeah.
more to appreciate.
Speaking of appreciating,
Yeah.
Zhao's analysis really highlighted all the work that went into creating the show's visual style.
Right. The influence of anime and traditional East Asian art is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
From the character designs
Yeah.
to the fight choreography
Right.
to those incredible landscapes.
It's like the creators took the best parts of those art forms and blended them together with their own vision.
They created something that's both visually stunning and culturally rich.
No wonder Avatar has won so many awards for its animation.
And they deserve every one of them.
Right. Think about those fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just mindless action.
No.
They're choreographed so beautifully.
Yeah.
They're full of grace and fluidity and precision.
It's like watching a dance.
They showcase the beauty and power of bending in such an amazing way.
What about the character designs?
Oh, yeah, they're so unique and memorable,
Hmm.
drawing inspiration from all sorts of East Asian cultures. You
Ah.
can see it in their clothes,
Yeah.
their hairstyles,
Oh.
their facial features,
But every detail was considered.
and those landscapes.
Don't even get me started.
Right?
From the towering peaks of the Southern Air Temple
Mm.
to those vibrant forests in the Earth Kingdom
Yeah.
to the fiery volcanoes of the Fire Nation.
They captured the beauty and variety of nature so well.
Right. Like they took inspiration from real places,
Mhm.
but added a touch of magic and wonder.
And the music.
Oh, the music.
Don't forget about the music.
We can't.
It's such a beautiful mix of traditional East Asian instruments and a more modern orchestral score. It complements the visuals perfectly, making those key moments even more powerful.
It's another example of how much attention to detail went into the show.
Hmm.
They weren't just trying to entertain.
Wow.
They wanted to create a whole
A
experience.
fully immersive experience.
Exactly.
And they did.
They really did.
Avatar has become a cultural phenomenon,
It has.
inspiring people all over the world with its themes of hope and courage and the strength of friendship.
And it keeps growing.
It's a show that transcends generations, cultures, and even time itself.
It does.
And speaking of time,
Yeah.
Zhao's analysis also looks at how the show deals with the passage of time,
Okay.
especially through the idea of cycles.
Cycles are everywhere in Avatar.
Right.
You see them in the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
The cycle of reincarnation.
Right.
Even in how history repeats itself.
Those cycles remind us that everything's connected,
Mhm.
that change is always happening,
Yeah.
and that even when things are really tough, there's always hope for renewal and rebirth.
It's a powerful message, especially today when it's so easy to get caught up in what's happening right now.
Yeah, we often forget about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Avatar encourages us to look at the long term, to recognize how history repeats itself,
Right.
and to understand that even the darkest times don't last forever.
And this cyclical view of time is really important in East Asian thought and spirituality.
It is.
The creators didn't just throw in those references randomly,
They really thought about how to weave them into the story.
giving the show even more depth and meaning.
It's like a treasure hunt.
It is.
There's always more to discover.
And speaking of discovering things,
Yeah.
Zhao's analysis also points out how the show subtly critiques social norms and expectations.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it challenges traditional ideas about gender roles,
No.
questions why we blindly obey authority,
Right.
and highlights how important critical thinking is.
And making your own judgments.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I love about Avatar.
You do.
It makes you think about the world around you.
Yeah.
It encourages you to think for yourself and to stand up for what you believe in.
That's so important, especially for young people who are still figuring out what they believe.
Exactly. It shows them that they have a voice,
Right.
that they can make a difference,
Mhm.
and that they don't have to just accept things the way they are.
It empowers them.
And it's a message that resonates with people of all ages.
It reminds us that we all have the power to shape our own lives.
And to create a better world.
Exactly. And speaking of creating a better world, Zhao's analysis also looks at how the show portrays social justice and equality.
Oh, wow. Tell me more about that.
Avatar tackles these issues in a really thoughtful way. You know, it highlights the inequalities that exist
Right.
and how important it is to fight for change.
It's refreshing to see a show that doesn't shy away from these issues.
Yeah,
It doesn't try to pretend that oppression and injustice don't exist.
it doesn't.
Avatar acknowledges those realities,
Mhm.
but it also offers hope.
It
It
does.
shows that even when things seem really tough, people can come together to challenge the way things are,
Yeah.
to fight for a better future.
And that's a message that's so relevant today.
It is.
As we continue to deal with social injustice and inequality in our own world.
It's a reminder that we can't just sit back and do nothing.
Right.
We have a responsibility to speak out against what's wrong
Mm,
and to work towards a world that's more fair and just for everyone.
exactly. And it shows us that even small actions can make a difference.
They can.
Every voice counts.
Every action matters.
And speaking of actions, let's talk about one of the most important themes in Avatar. The idea of choosing compassion over revenge.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. It comes up again and again throughout the series.
You see it in Aang's dedication to nonviolence,
Mm-hmm.
in Katara's empathy for those who are hurting,
Yeah.
and in Zuko's transformation from a vengeful prince to a compassionate ally.
That's such a powerful message,
It is.
especially in a world where it's so easy to get trapped in cycles of anger and violence.
Avatar reminds us that there's always another way,
Mm.
a path of forgiveness and understanding.
It's not always easy,
It's not.
but it's the path that leads to peace.
And healing.
And it's the path that leads to true strength.
Right.
Avatar shows us that true strength doesn't come from power or domination.
It comes from being compassionate,
Yeah.
from empathy,
Mm-hmm.
and from being willing to forgive.
It's a message that's so easy to forget when we're angry or hurt,
It is.
but it's one that we need to remember now more than ever.
We need to remember that even those we see as enemies are still human,
Yeah.
capable of changing and becoming better.
Right.
We need to remember that.
You know, it's amazing how Avatar manages to fit so many big ideas into a show that's also so much fun to watch.
Right.
And once you start to understand those deeper layers,
Yeah.
it's like the whole show takes on this whole new meaning.
It's like those cultural details aren't just there for show. They're like
Mhm.
woven into the very fabric of the story.
I see what you mean.
They shape why the characters do what they do,
Mm-hmm.
the problems they face,
Okay.
the big ideas the show is exploring. It's all connected.
Zhao's analysis really made me see that.
It is pretty eye-opening.
One of the best examples is how much the show focuses on balance, which is a really important idea in so many East Asian philosophies.
Yeah.
And you see it everywhere in the show, from Akang trying to restore balance to the Four Nations,
Right.
to Zuko's struggle to find balance between how he was raised in the Fire Nation and what he knows is right.
It's not just an idea either.
Right.
You actually see it represented visually throughout the show.
Oh, yeah. Give me an example.
Think about those amazing bending scenes.
Okay.
Those flowing movements that are like the harmonious flow of energy in nature.
Yep. Love those scenes.
Me too.
They're so cool.
It's like watching that idea of balance come to life.
It's like the show is saying balance isn't just some abstract idea.
Right.
It's something you can actually see and feel and experience.
Exactly.
And that leads us to another important aspect of the show, spirituality.
Oh, yeah.
Avatar doesn't just touch on spirituality a little bit.
Right.
It dives right in,
It does.
drawing on all these different traditions to create this really complex and interesting spiritual landscape.
What I find so impressive is that it doesn't favor one tradition over another.
Okay.
You see elements of Tibetan Buddhism, Chinese ancestor worship, indigenous spiritualities that connect with nature.
Right.
It's all presented with respect and this sense that they're all connected somehow.
It's like the show is saying that there are many different paths to spiritual understanding, and they can all exist together peacefully.
Exactly. And that message of inclusivity and respect for different beliefs is so important,
It is.
especially today.
Absolutely.
You know, we were talking about the connection between each bending style and specific martial arts earlier.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating.
Zhao's analysis pointed out that there's an even deeper connection.
Really? Tell me more.
It's not just about the moves themselves, it's about the philosophies and principles behind them.
So it's not just about learning how to fight.
Right.
It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind those movements.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Like, for example, think about water bending.
Okay.
We said it's based on Tai Chi, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's more to it than that.
Oh, okay.
Tai Chi is all about harmony and balance, going with the flow, just like water.
Right?
And you can see those ideas reflected in how fluid and adaptable waterbending is.
It's like the show is saying that if you want to truly understand waterbending,
Yeah,
you got to understand the philosophy behind it.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is true for all the bending styles. Like earthbending, which is all about strength and stability.
Right. It's grounded.
Yeah, it draws from Hung Gar,
Okay.
which is a southern Chinese martial art, known for its strong stances and strikes.
Makes sense when you think about how tough Earth bends.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's all about being unmovable, unyielding.
Just like the Earth.
What about firebending?
Oh, yeah. Firebending.
In its purest form, it's about the balance between creating and destroying,
Okay.
which is a core concept in a lot of East Asian spiritual traditions.
And remember how Zuko really struggled with that balance.
Oh, totally.
At first, his firebending was fueled by anger and rage. It was destructive.
But as he learned to control his emotions and find inner peace,
Yeah.
his firebending became more balanced and controlled.
It's like his firebending was a mirror of what was going on inside him.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And then there's airbending, which is about evading spirituality and being detached from material things.
Yeah.
It reflects the ideas of Baghua's Hang, a Chinese martial art known for its circular movements and its focus on connecting with the natural flow of energy.
It's like airbenders are dancing with the wind.
Right.
Moving so effortlessly.
Unburdened by worldly concerns.
And that connection to spirituality is like the key to airbending.
It's not just about physical skill.
Right.
It's a spiritual practice, a way of connecting to something bigger than yourself.
It's like the show is saying, if you want to truly master bending, you need to master yourself.
And that brings us back to the idea of interconnectedness that we were talking about.
Right, that everything is connected.
Avatar constantly emphasizes how everything is linked. The elements, the spirit world, people,
Yeah.
even our own thoughts and feelings.
You see it everywhere in the relationships between the characters.
Right.
The way the different bending styles interact, the balance between the physical world and the spiritual world.
It's like the creators were showing us that we're all part of this huge web of life.
Yeah.
And that what we do affects everything around us.
It's a powerful message, especially today when it's so easy to feel isolated and alone.
It is.
Avatar reminds us that we are connected to each other and that we need to take care of each other and the planet.
Exactly.
And even small actions can make a big difference.
So, as we finish up our deep dive into the world of Avatar,
Yeah.
let's remember to keep exploring those connections, keep learning,
Yeah.
and appreciate how rich and diverse our world is.
Let's carry the spirit of Avatar with us.
I like
Let's
that.
be more compassionate, more understanding,
Yeah.
more connected to the world around us.
Because that's what Avatar is all about, right?
It is.
Finding balance,
Seeking harmony.
creating a world where everyone can thrive.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Avatar, The Last Airbender.
It was fun.
We'll see you next time.